Yes, so today we are going to react to Chapter 8 of the Philosopher's Stone and Episode 8 of Through The GriffinDoor Chapter. Before we get into it, I just want to say that this video is awesome by WNG, and you'll put 10% off your order of your energy pass or the stickers at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that, and without further ado, but first let's do this. Just look like such a good intro.
Welcome, dear listeners. I'm Jonathan Carlin.
And I'm Benjamin Carlin.
And we invite you to join us through the Gryffindor, your one-way ticket to the enchanting world of Harry Potter. So grab your wands and dust off your broomsticks and join us as we unlock the secrets behind Philosopher's Stone, Chapter 8, The Potions Master.
Oh, so
I forgot the Potion Master.
yeah. So I feel like we're this. I found this to be an interesting chapter on the whole, because so far as the story has unfolded for our first 7 chapters, I feel like they are all just remarkably heavy with like brand new information, lots of like hard hitting stuff. But I feel like this is sort of like you're sort of in that like mid-season, like it's not exactly a filler episode, like important stuff.
Oh, absolutely important stuff. There's a lot of like tiny, not necessarily like foreshadowing stuff, just sort of stuff that when you read it again the next time you're like, oh, this was kind of like an you can like, it feels like it was established earlier, but you couldn't have like connected it or predicted it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. So anyway, yeah, the Potions Master really is going to be a chapter that revolves around Harry's first week at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
It gives us an introduction to many of the classes that he is going to be taking on the annual basis.
This is the real trick, is that chapters like this, like there are often sections of the story that will do exactly what this chapter does, where it's like, here were the proceedings at Hogwarts, things were changing, important plot device disguised as expositional things happening in the castle.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you're right, it is designed to feel like a filler chapter so that you miss the important things.
Yeah. So I do think there's a lot to unlock in here in terms of some really fun details. But right away we sort of get like the introduction, you know, where like the chapter starts with minimal context other than just there, look, where? Next to the tall kid with the red hair, wearing the glasses. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? So it's just sort of like marking almost immediately how recognizable Harry's going to be inside of, you know, the wizarding world at school. You know, all of his fellow classmates, you know, have heard the tale. They know who he is. It's remarkable that he's there. So you start to get like a feel for the additional pressure Harry will always have on himself as he moves forward as a student. Like he's, no matter what, I mean, he's living a rather unique existence, but his, even compared to other students, is that much more unique.
Absolutely. Just, it's established right away. And then you start hearing about the castle itself, how there's 142 staircases, just a real popular trivia question. Remember that one, 142 staircases at Hogwarts.
Yeah, this is one of those where I remember once upon a time when I was losing so horrendously in the Jay versus Ben episodes. I remember like I was like, I'm going to read through, I'm going to start making notes, I'm going to have like mnemonic devices and different ways to to remember details, and my really ridiculous.
Yeah, because I know what Ben's about to say here, and that is, it is, I love you, -1, because I love you is I is 1. L is I love you. So I is 1. I is 1. Now is 4, and U is 3. So take away the 1 from U, and you get 142. So yeah, I would say that's what he's going to say about this. But at the moment, I think that is what he's doing with this.
One is that I remember in elementary school, kids would say 143 or 143 meant I love you, because it was like 1 for I, 4 for love, and then 3 for you. So 143
Yeah,
meant
like the number of letters in each thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
why would that mean that?
I know. Literally, I had to remember why it worked. Because
Okay.
I was like, I know at one point in time I knew how this was a thing, but I can't remember why it is now a thing. But so literally, my ridiculous device for remembering the staircases is it's 143 minus 1.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's like
I love you
Yeah.
-1.
I have mild attachment. Not like I have some reason why I can remember the number 143, and that just helps me then backpedal into 142.
Yeah. The weird thing is, whenever this question comes up, the number I always think of is 143.
Okay,
Instead
yeah,
of 142. I don't know why. It just seems like a more memorable number or something.
Maybe it's the I love you thing.
Maybe it's the I love
Yeah.
you thing. I didn't know about that until 10 seconds ago, but maybe deep in my memory I did.
Can I just say one of the things I
Yeah,
found interesting about this is that when it's talking about like all the different
funny.
staircases, it says there are wide ones, sweeping ones, narrow, rickety ones, some that led somewhere different on a Friday, some with a vanishing step halfway up that you had to remember to jump. So there's a little bit of this, like some that led to somewhere different on a Friday, but there is no actual words that say that the staircases themselves move. And this is like one of those things that like the movie introduces, and like as soon as they like enter like the grand, I don't know,
Oh, yeah.
hallways
Yeah.
or whatever, you look up and they're all moving like back and forth. But that's actually more of like a movie invention, and I don't think it's ever brought up again until like Half-Blood Prince.
Really?
Yeah, there's not like a really specific line that suggests that like they were on a staircase that like physically moved and then like prevented them from getting to where they were supposed to go.
That's interesting, because it does say that like it felt like things are moving around a lot. It was also hard to remember where anything was because it all seemed to move around a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it says that right after it describes the kind of stairs there are, and it describes a bunch of different kinds of stairs and the way that like maybe they lead different places, but that could be because the landing changes, not because the stair moved.
Right. Yeah, like it's hard to
that's
know.
Interesting.
I know. I thought that was interesting as well, because I mean, the moving staircases is just something that's like in my head canon for the Wizarding world.
Yeah,
And
I think it is canon now, because it's canon that Rowena Ravenclaw is the one who introduced the moving staircases, right?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, from her chocolate frog card. I think
Yeah.
that is like a detail that is known. Moving.
Yeah, I forgot about detail about the one that Ravenclaw house gets its name from. I forgot what she created the moving staircases, but yeah, just reminded to that, fact.
Just ever so slightly forward, you also get like doors that wouldn't open unless you asked politely or tickled them in exactly the right place.
Never tickle a sleeping dragon, Ben.
Yeah, we made the video, guys.
We made the video. It's out there. It's gonna yeah, because we actually, I think that video came out before the episode in which we discovered it in the podcast came out.
Yes, so we recorded the episode where we were like, did Hogwarts used to be a dragon? Going back to the Caput Draconis being the head of the dragon,
Yeah.
the Gryffindor common room, like physically possibly being in that position. But the tickling is certainly very interesting. We delved into it a lot. Honestly, the never tickle a sleeping dragon, I felt like ended up being like the really big, like just like, oh my gosh, like that's such a ridiculous motto for the school to have, and it never really comes up at all. And it's just like, because the school's a dragon.
Because the
that's what
school's
I
a
can
dragon.
answer.
It's just
And
like you're thinking it too metaphorically. It's literally
A dragon.
A dragon.
An actual dragon.
Yeah. Speaking of which, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, just on that tickling front, we do know eventually we will learn that the kitchens are hidden behind a portrait where if you tickle the pear, you do gain access. So even though we know that Harry doesn't learn that until what? When do we meet Winky? Fourth year?
Fourth year, yeah.
Yeah. So we know that it's a while before we'll learn that, but that is one of those. We know that that continues to be like a canon detail, like, like something that is revisited.
Yep. There's also, it says, I like this just tiny inclusion where it's just Harry was sure the coats of armor could walk, and I just wrote like, indeed. It's just like this like very little thing that's like, oh boy, can they walk? Oh boy, that's a very intentional detail right there.
Yes, they can quite literally defend the castle.
They can come to life and fight, which is super fun. One of the things that's always like, it's like you don't think about it because you're like, yeah, you're at a castle, but like he wouldn't believe they were lost. Filch catches them doing something. He said he wouldn't believe they were lost. They were sure they were trying to break into it on purpose, and was threatening to lock them in the dungeons when they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing. So, boy, a couple things about that sentence. First of all, it is so sneaky the way this is done. First of all, though, why like you don't think about it because they're in a castle and you're like, oh yeah, castles have dungeons, but like it's a school.
Yeah, like why would the school have a dungeon? And you would be about sitting in the basement, but isn't. A dungeon is a dungeon. Simple as that. So a school technically should not have one. And what was Cole doing anyway? Just I think he was trying to sneak around for something, I think. But, what was he doing? Anyway.
Why are there dungeons at all? There should be no dungeons.
There should be no dungeons, unless dungeons are just like basements.
I mean, I thought that. I was like, maybe this is the case. But I looked up the word dungeon, and it just means like secure prison cell, especially in a castle.
Wow.
So it's like there's not like mistaking it. You know, it's not like basement is just another word. Like dungeon means dungeon. I mean, that's what Filch is doing. He's threatening to lock them in the dungeons.
Okay, so here's my thoughts on this, because I think I've thought this before, like going back to the late 9th century when the founders would have been basically in 10th century, I guess, founding the school of Hogwarts. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for what is actually going on during this time in like actual real world history and like the perception of magic and witches and the way that people like this were being treated during those periods of time. You know, because this was obviously, you know, like throughout history, even though, you know, magic and stuff, as far as we know, just isn't real in the capacity that we're reading about it. It's not like people have not been punished for such things in the past. So part of me almost thinks that like if you were to really delve again into that founder series and get a feel for what the founders were trying to accomplish with the Castle of Hogwarts, it almost occurs to me that there's some outside possibility that it wasn't solely intended to be just a school, but also like a multifunctional.
Yeah, like as a castle, was it more of like a genuine fortress or something, like a line of defense?
Yeah, because and we also know that Hogsmeade, the town that literally exists right next to Hogwarts, I think is the only known, at least in England, the only exclusively wizarding population.
Right.
Like
so
even Godric's Hollow has Muggles. Like
so was this like a place for the town to retreat to in case of attack or something?
Almost certainly is sort of what my mind would say. So like I almost feel like what the founders were really attempting to do was provide safe haven for the wizarding world, and then once that was sort of happening and once there was a place for people to potentially go, it was like we can also like be teaching people while we're here, and like that way if they have control over their magic, then it's altogether less dangerous, you know, like teach a code of conduct. So, you know, I certainly think, because the statute of secrecy won't be created for centuries. I think it's not until like the 1600s or 1700s when that's put into place. I can't remember the specific detail, but either way, I mean, it means that there's a good possibility, especially being so remote, that they were just quite literally trying to provide a place for people to go and hide.
That's what it seems to me. I mean, the fact that they have dungeons means that they at one point were used for housing prisoners. So the castle must have served that function at some point.
But it's certainly not for students.
Certainly not for students. Yeah, Filch. The poltergeist.
The poltergeist.
The other interesting thing about that exact sentence is that it says like this is such a tricky sentence because Filch is getting Harry and them in trouble for accidentally trying to get through the entrance of the out of bounds corridor where Fluffy is. They don't know that yet, but they're rescued by Professor Quirrell, who is passing by, and it's like you think, oh, he rescued them, that's great, and it's like no, he's investigating the spot, like that's why he's there, and it's like it paints him as a good guy, but it's like a small detail that like no, he's the bad guy.
It's like that's why Quirrell is there.
Yeah, that's like, why Quirrell.
Yeah, the point was it could just be a cover up for whatever else he was doing in that area.
Was there.
It's like it's not convenient timing, and like if anything, like Quirrell probably like I imagine if you were to see the whole scene through his lens, what you would witness is him almost having a sense of feeling caught himself.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh no, Filch, these kids are fine. Like,
yeah.
you know, like realizing in the moment, like, wait, no, I have the authority here. Like,
right,
you know,
exactly.
like I'm a teacher, like as far as anybody else knows, I'm just a teacher. I'm allowed to be here.
Right.
But yeah, so again, I know that we talked a little bit about it in the last chapter, but I feel like you are getting
realizing, oh no, what I said yours versus me being caught by whatever else I was doing here.
Really significant contrast here between the two paragraphs adjoining. So basically you get one big paragraph about Peeves and what happens if you run into Peeves, and then you get a big paragraph about Filch and what happens if you run into Filch. And it's just again, I mean, these two are the antithesis of one another. Like they are exact equal opposites of one another. It's like,
I mean, even the length of paragraph looks the exact same.
It really does. Like this is, I mean, I don't want to harp on it for too long because I know we talk about it all the time, but it really has just always been one of my favorite theories, and I feel like I would love for this one to just be properly confirmed. Like it seems so harmless. Otherwise, it doesn't change anything about the story.
No, just a poltergeist. It just sort of explains at least the connection between him and Mrs. Norris. There's like something magical.
Yes, almost certainly.
Yep.
Not to mention, Filch also knows all the secret passageways, which we learn about. You know, it does say
because he's part of the castle.
Because he's part of the castle.
Exactly.
Yep. He knows it better than anyone, except for maybe the Weasley twins.
Map foreshadowing right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little bit of a nod to the fact that the Weasleys are already like one step ahead.
Oh my gosh, there's so many nods to Fred and George being like such troublemakers and such like so knowledgeable about the castle. Like even in just like this chapter alone, I think I wrote it down later on. Like there's so many nods to them.
Well, that's the thing. Like this is where I've always said, like, you know, people ask a lot, like, you know, what could the new like HBO series or something do to provide something new to the story overall? And I always come back to Fred and George. Like you can't really tell. Like it's not like you need like the story as told by Ron, the story as told by Hermione, because like they're just so adjacent to Harry all the time that they're effectively part of the main story always.
Yeah.
So it's like who then becomes like your secondary characters whose tale you want to follow. And I just love Fred and George. They're like two of my favorite like Harry Potter characters of all time.
They're fantastic. I mean, I think
and they would be fun to follow out too, because they're jokesters, they're twisters, but they would be hilarious to just follow on when you're dealing with the same story beats from the books.
Other scene, I could almost see like Harry goes to bed after the first night, wakes up the next day, and you see him pushing on the door with Fluffy. Filch walks up and it's like, "Hi, get out of here," or whatever.
Nice Filch.
Yeah,
Thank you. And then you see Quirrell show up, and then like later in the season, as he's like explaining it to Harry, you can see like the flashback where like what really happened.
Oh yes,
kind of thing. You know,
Yep.
That's the sort of thing I think would be interesting. I think there's an interesting sentence here that says there was a lot more to magic, as Harry's quickly found out, than waving your wand and saying a few funny words. And it's like, that's true, but also a lot of times that is all it is.
You know, we talk about the magic systems sometimes that are used in different fantasy novels, and it's really fascinating because I actually had never caught this before, but on this particular pass through, I was like, wait a second, this stands out to me all of a sudden. But yeah, so in the world of Harry Potter, it always feels like we're dealing with what is largely regarded as a soft magic system, which largely is sort of like this big question of like, what physical toll does it ultimately take on the Witcher wizard to cast the spell. Like if you were in a duel and you're just blasting spells back and forth, are you exhausted from that? Does it like sap a certain kind of like inner like mana energy that like you know that like fuels your magic as time goes on? Do you have like a recharge period or anything,
right?
Or can you just continuously, you know, cast? And it seems like for the most part, like the incantation is sort of like a way to direct your efforts and sort of like associate the intended magic with an otherwise movement, because we know the incantation itself is not necessary because there is nonverbal magic,
right?
You know, so that's a certain piece of it. You've also got the fact that you can channel your magic through any object, but like wands are most adept at doing so. So it means like you could technically pick up like a piece of chalk and probably like make something come from a piece of chalk.
Well, because you don't even need a wand. You know, like Harry's doing magic. You know, he makes the glass disappear at the zoo.
Right.
Wandless magic is a thing too.
Yeah, and when you learn about like, you know, wizards in North America, you'll learn that like, you know, the like, you know, native people to the area were basically just doing wandless magic. Like
Like they didn't have wands.
Like that was just their specialty. Yeah. But one of the things that I found to be particularly interesting is because the story that we always like to really compare the magic system to of Harry Potter is our other favorite, you know, fantasy series, which was called Name of the Wind or the Kingkiller Chronicles, and they use a type of magic called sympathy.
Yeah, so what they're talking about here is something from another book series that they have read. Personally, I haven't read it. I tried to pick it up when I was in high school, but just the print in the book was so darn small, I could barely read it, so there was no point in picking up the book. Since I was impaired and it would take me practically the entire school year to read the darn book. And I was just before the month for like 2 months or so, or whatever the time frame for taking books out were at my high school. So there's no point picking up the book.
Which basically goes into a whole bunch of different things. But it's basically like physics-based magic, essentially.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's really fascinating is that in the very next page, we learned that in their first Transfiguration class, McGonagall tasks them with changing a match into a needle.
Yep.
And there's actually a little bit of a sympathetic link going on, I feel like, there, because you quite literally have two objects that are like similar in size and stature.
Yeah.
Which should make the conversion like a little bit more simple in the scheme of things. So like for this to be the starting point, to use two objects that are so similar suggests on some level that like that similarity aids in the ease of conversion.
It seems like it almost lends itself to like even the possibility of it. Like I don't think you could turn like a matchstick into like a pig.
Well,
you know?
I mean, we see her in this change a desk into a pig.
Oh, I know, but a desk is more pig-shaped to begin with.
That's true. Like it has 4 legs.
Right.
That's a good point.
It is like the appropriate size. Maybe you could turn a matchstick into like a really tiny pig.
Right. Well, one of the other details I was looking into, because I was trying to feel like the different things that they do in class, and like at one point in time they convert like pin cushions into like little hedgehogs or porcupines, which is like, again, you know, like those are fairly similar.
Yeah.
But the other one that I found fascinating is that eventually they'll do guinea pigs into guinea fowl. And guinea pigs are like a small,
like a little bit bigger hamster.
Yeah, like a little rodent type thing. And a guinea fowl is closer to like a chicken. And so what's interesting about that is it's actually the name is the same. So you have guinea and guinea. So there's a little bit of that sympathetic link going on, even though it's only in the proper name for the item. So anyway, I found that to be just kind of
Magic cares about puns.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit for sure.
Takes into consideration. It's quirky like that.
Okay, so you keep going through his classes here. I thought it was interesting that like so he's going through all the different classes he has, or like it's introducing you to the number of different people in the castle and stuff. But I think it's so funny that like you always think of how Hogwarts is this like constantly happy, magical place, but like if you're going through this, like Professor Binns is super boring, Peeves terrible, Filch terrible, Snape mean, McGonagall hard. It's like all of the classes seems kind of rough.
Even Sprout is described.
Yeah.
And I was like, poor Sprout. The description of her, the first one we ever get is dumpy little witch.
Right.
Which I was like,
Yeah,
that feels like an
you know,
insult on
come
any
on
level
now,
you choose.
people
I was like, poor.
do.
I mean, Sprout. Look, I tell you what,
That's
I'm
what's
here
fine.
for you. Okay, just so
Yeah.
you know.
on,
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, it says. I mean, even when you get to, did you say Coral's class, which everybody was
yeah.
super excited about, and it turned out to be a bit of a joke.
Bit of a joke. It's like, okay, what are we learning anything in?
Anything at all? Are we
Anything at
actually
all?
being educated
I
in
know.
this system here?
Okay. Also, this is just like a little Easter egg, or not even Easter egg, but like in Professor Bin's class, it says the students are confusing Emmerich the Evil and Urich the Oddball.
Yeah.
Which has to just be based on the fact that their names sound similar, because like what they're each famous for is like wildly different.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, Emmerich the Evil goes on to, he does get mentioned again as a former master of the Elder Wand, or at least wielder. I don't know about master.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
one. Like I think Xenophilius mentions him later on as well. So that's
wow,
sort of there.
what a throwback.
He was
Okay.
killed by Egbert the Egregious in gruesome fashion.
Oh, sure,
Which,
of course.
again, if you had the Elder Wand and was truly master of it,
You
the
should've
Elder
lost.
Wand sucks at winning duels. Like it does not
Yeah,
do what it says on the box.
Well, I just think the legend is mistaken.
It's just wrong.
Yeah, the whole. I mean, we could probably do just an entire episode about nothing but the Elder Wand.
I mean,
honestly.
we've made like 10 videos about nothing but the Elder Wand on the main channel.
and I still don't even know exactly what I stand on.
I think
but-
our most recent pass at it that you need to be worthy to be like a true like anyone can hold it and do magic, and
Right.
it is better at like choosing or like working for anyone than like say like Ron's hand-me-down wand
Sure.
than most wands, but like the thing that makes it appear to constantly be powerful is that powerful people think it's powerful, so they seek it out, and then because they are powerful, they do things with it.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like what Ollivander says, like, terrible, yes, but great.
Right.
It's
right.
like
right.
this
yeah.
is the nature of the Elder Wand. It is constantly being welt by terrible but great people, and so it gets this
Yeah.
reputation as being
I
good. But
don't
as far as I'm concerned, the
sad.
only two people to ever have genuinely been masters of the Elder Wand that we are aware of are Dumbledore and Harry, because they're the only two people who we ever see genuinely perform extraordinary magic. And that piece of magic is the same for both of them, and it is repairing a wand. Dumbledore repairs Hagrid's, whereas Harry repairs his own, which Ollivander says shouldn't be possible. And Ollivander, you think you can trust to know, since his family's been doing it for over 1,200 years or something.
Yeah, it's just been forever and a half.
So-
Yep. No, I
There you
absolutely
go.
agree.
They're
Okay,
both, it's like Mjolnir.
so did you end up telling me who Urich the Oddball?
Urich the Oddball is a appropriately named super odd guy. He used to wear a jellyfish as a hat,
Cool.
and he would sleep with 50 auguries in the room with him.
Yes,
50?
50, and of course the auguries have this like bad reputation of like predicting death.
Yeah.
But what they actually predict is oncoming rain. But he was.
Okay, yes, I can see why he'd be called Eric the Oddball. This is a better choice of things to do. So yeah, I can see it being super odd.
Up with 50 of them, and there was a big storm coming, so they're all going crazy. He woke up and assumed that because they were all yelling so loudly that he must be dead and was a ghost, and gave himself a concussion trying to walk through walls, which he couldn't because
he's
he
not a
wasn't
ghost.
dead. Yeah, but he was in Ravenclaw and was possibly taught by Rowena herself.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I'm
yeah.
not really sure why he's confused with Emmerich, because they're not really the same in that way at all.
Yeah,
But-
this is like one of those things where it's like, is like what it's coming down to, that like Binns is just this inefficient at teaching.
Oh, why? This is another one. It's like, why does Dumbledore let Professor Binns continue to be the teacher? Like, it's just such a bad staffing choice. Like, all of the students are bored.
Yes,
You know?
like to problematic degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is. I mean, and it's interesting.
Yeah, but Professor Binns teaches history and magic, and history on its own isn't that interesting. So it doesn't really matter who you have coming in. Just the class is going to be boring no matter what.
thing too, it's like Dumbledore is always kind of odd with who he elects to hire for all the positions. Like even going through all this, I mean, like McGonagall is. I mean, Flitwick never really has anything negative super attached to him at all. But McGonagall feels like she's probably like the most effective teacher. Snape seems like he just simply scares everyone.
Snape, yeah, I mean, anytime I feel like you see Snape teaching, it's just like I wrote the instructions on the chalkboard. Do it.
You can follow in Harry Potter's footsteps by playing Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. Choose your wand and learn magic.
Oh yeah,
Choose your house.
So that's it.
Learn spells and duel enemies. Develop romantic relationships. Play now.
That's all. I'll be here doing no instruction at all.
Yeah, that's not incredibly helpful.
Yeah, even when Slughorn's there, he's like, "Ooh, I suppose you added some peppermint to counteract the whatever." It's like that's a useful tip.
Right. It's like
Snape's not passing out peppermint tips.
That's the thing too. Is like we know that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince. We know that he has all these tips that he's written in like the ledgers of his books. It's like, why is he not literally teaching all of his students exactly these things?
I know.
This is like one of those things where it's almost like a vanity issue where it's like the teacher becomes the master. No, the student becomes the master. Got that right that second time. Where it's almost like, was Snape just like having like a pride related issue when he was just like worried that one of his students would become better than him at his own craft?
Right. He's like, I know all the secrets, and I'm a teacher. I'm not going to tell you the secrets because I earned those myself by figuring them out. That's not for you to know.
I know. That's like, like, no, this is the exact, this is why the student becomes the master, because they have the benefit of all of the teaching.
Right. Yeah. Like you are like actively withholding information from your student. You're being a bad teacher on purpose, it feels like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
More on Snape in just a second, because there was another
the chapter is called The Potions Master.
I know, yeah. So we'll definitely spend some more time on him. But I wanted to just touch on a little detail. So we get into Quirrell's room, which, we're doing DADA, which we know eventually will go on to be Harry's like most prominent class, although not for any help from his first 2 years of education in the subject. He basically learns in years 3, 4, and I guess in 6.
I guess Snape was teaching him then. But
1, 2, and 5. So like of his 6 years at school, Harry, the high school dropout, has 3 actual years of education in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and is apparently like the best ever at it. So I don't know how to explain that. But one of the things I thought was just kind of funny, or I was like, I wonder if this is supposed to be a nod. But he says his turban, he told them, had been given to him by an African prince as a thank you for getting rid of a troublesome zombie. I have literally no idea if this is intended to be like a little bit of like a spoof on like the classic like Nigerian prince email scam. Because during like I think like the late 90s, early 2000s, it was just like a really common trope of a scam that would happen. It was essentially like a wealthy African prince essentially would reach out to you and say like, hey, I'm on hard times, but if you can help me like through this difficult piece or whatever, then I will like reward you beyond your wildest dreams or something. And people were like, oh, it's a prince reaching out for help, like of course I'll help.
Of course.
But like obviously like even the class is like it says literally the next sentence, but they weren't sure they believed the story. And it's like even that feels like it like falls in line. Like if you're just like an everyday household United States resident, why would a Nigerian prince be reaching out to you in particular?
Right.
Like, it's like you should be skeptical of that story. Basically, is what it comes down to. And so I don't know whether or not it's supposed to be a nod at all, but I had never caught that before, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like a joke or anything there.
Well, it's almost certainly not true because we know the real reason he wears the turban is to seal Voldemort in on the back of his head. What's interesting is that I think it's like it's like when you meet Quirrell in the movies, he's immediately wearing the turban, but it sounds like maybe he wasn't wearing the turban until term started.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, so like when Harry meets him in the Leaky Cauldron, he's not wearing the turban the first time.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's because so again, I think we've talked about that a little bit, but it's like Harry reaches out and is able to shake Quirrell's hand at the Leaky Cauldron without it being
without hurting him.
So that must mean that Voldemort has not yet taken up residence in the back of Quirrell's head.
Yeah, but now he has.
Now he has,
for sure. He's there. Which also there's a nod to that as well, where it says a funny smell hung around the turban. That's just Voldemort.
yeah. It's like is this to suggest that Voldemort smells bad?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm thinking of like during COVID times when you have to wear a mask all day, and it's like, you're just sort of breathing into the mask all day. Like the mask doesn't smell great by the end of the day.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
And he's just back there just like breathing in his own bad breath all day.
Yeah.
That is just a ridiculous thing to think about. Is Voldemort just being like, "Oh, this really stinks."
I know. Like, well,
Yeah.
it's going to be quiet back here. I can't say anything. The ruler of all darkness. I'm just stuck on the back of this guy's head under a turban.
Yeah, just absolutely no sympathy for old Voldemort over there.
Also, the next day,
Yeah, but it's so funny to think about like him be like, oh, my fish stinks, oh, my fish stinks, oh, girl, you should wash your turban, you should wash your turban, like, oh, I wish you were most powerful vision ever. It has to call his head. Oh my God.
I always think this is just funny where they're eating breakfast and what have we got today? Harry asked Ron as he poured sugar on his porridge, and I'm like, Harry, you were red.
It's the most boring thing ever.
Magic school. Why are you eating porridge?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, man. There has got to be better options than porridge.
Than porridge. But
Which can't even be that good. You're like dumping sugar on it. Like even you were like, yeah, it's only okay.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
I feel like throughout the future of all of wizarding meals.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like occasionally,
Maybe Harry just likes plain food.
Plain food,
He's just
yeah.
like, I want baked potatoes and porridge.
Yeah, just I'll take them together. Even this was something I never really super considered before, but the double potions with the Slytherins. This was like one of those things. I've always interpreted double potions or any double class as like back-to-back lessons, but I don't know whether or not like they've had classes with anybody else so far. So it's like this could be interpreted as double potions means you're taking a class with another house at the same time.
I think that is what it means, but they never describe it as like double care of magical creatures with the Slytherins.
Yeah, that's true. Like it does seem like potions is the one they always have double of, but then I think they're supposed to be taking not transfiguration, herbology like 3 days a week.
Yeah, and they take, and I know in at least their second year they have herbology with the Hufflepuffs.
Right, so is that double herbology?
Is that double herbology? Or does double mean that the class is back to back? Which would almost make sense for potions because you think maybe you need like a longer time to brew the potion or something.
Well, like in college, yeah, like I like took like geology for example because I just needed the science, but it was like one of those things where I would have like the practical where you would go in and they would like teach you about the rocks and minerals and such like that, and then you would have the lab afterwards. So class was like 3 hours long because you'd spend the first hour and a half learning and the second hour and a half like doing whatever
the lab.
the lab.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't know whether it means potions class is just 2 classes back to back, or if it just means that you're having class with the second house. But either way, we know they constantly have or at least potions with the Slytherins and care of magical creatures with the Slytherins.
Yes.
And it seems like I think they have whatchamabut, I just said it, herbology with the Hufflepuffs. I don't think there is a single case where we see the Gryffindors having class with the Ravenclaws ever.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
really we
whatever
know the
happened.
fewest Ravenclaws I think of any other house as we learn more about the other students in Harry's year and stuff. So that is very interesting. Real quick there, we do get the letter from Hagrid inviting Harry down to have tea after his first week. This is something that makes Harry happy though, because he is then of course heading to his least favorite class, where basically right away we get the line Harry says, at the start of term banquet, Harry had gotten the idea that Professor Snape disliked him. By the end of the first potions lesson, he knew he'd been wrong. Snape didn't dislike Harry, he hated him.
Fact. Yes.
Straight fact.
Besides the fact.
Snape basically goes on the offensive right away.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the least professional thing he could possibly do.
It really is.
You know, it's like, 'cause, I mean, it has to be the case, and you know, it's like I'm sure if you talk to any teacher, I guarantee that there are students in every class where it's just like, it would make my life a lot easier if you were just simply not in this class, you know, because because it's always trouble, it's always something. But like, I still don't think that they're like unnecessary. Like, it is still not okay to be unfairly difficult on those students. You know, it's like they are still just students. That you still have to treat them.
Well, at this point, he hasn't done anything either.
I know, yeah. So he's just like just right away. He's just super mean.
Yeah.
There is you do sort of get like a little bit of an idea that despite the fact that he always seems to covet the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, that he does have a deep passion for potions in the way that he describes like the subtle science and exact art of potion making.
Yeah, so he's talking about like what you can learn in this class, and he says, I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even put a stopper on death. And I was like trying to think if those things actually came to pass at any point.
I mean, brew glory could be Felix Felicis.
That is what I wrote. Is that Felix Felicis? And then I can teach you how to bottle fame. I wrote like polyjuice potion next to that because they literally all transform into Harry, who is famous at one point.
Yeah,
like you sort of bottled fame in that way. I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, but like otherwise you would think that this would largely be like if it was just a potion that simply made you famous somehow, a la Genie making Aladdin a prince, you know, like it seemed like, you know, if you took it and all of a sudden it's just like there's an entire wealth of knowledge about you as a person and all of your accolades, and you're like a well-known person because you drank this potion. It's like, I don't know how that would work. It seems like Gilderoy Lockhart, absolutely, it would have been like an easier path to success to just brew a whole bunch of
whatever that was.
Whatever fame.
But exactly what you just said, if you could just turn into a person who everyone knew about, that would be like taking polyjuice potion and just doing that with someone.
Yeah,
that's true.
Everyone already knew about.
Yes, that's a very good point. That is a very good point.
Which, I mean, does come up. And then even Stopper Death, I just wrote down like Bezoar, which he does literally teach them by the end of this page.
Yes.
Yeah,
no,
and Harry does use it.
Yeah, so the Bezoar is kind of an interesting one because we do know that, like, fast forward to year 6, Harry will learn from Snape again, the Half-Blood Prince, that, like, the ultimate antidote for most things is just simply shoving a Bezoar down their throat, and it will pretty much, it's maybe not like a perfect cure-all, but like in most cases it will work.
I know. I think there's a funny moment there where I think, because Harry pulls out the Bezoar in class and, like, you know, Slughorn is like, 10 points for sheer cheek, you know, or whatever.
Yes.
And Hermione's all mad because Harry learned about it from the book. And he's like, you could have learned about it in our first year if you'd been listening to Professor Snape. And it's like, he still learned it from Professor Snape at the end.
He did still learn it. That is such a good point. That is such a good point. Interestingly, with the Bezoar, we've actually, you and I have held one before.
A real one. Yeah, Bezoars are real things. Not like they won't magically, no, they don't like cure you from poison.
No, but I think that they are from the stomach of a goat.
They are from the stomach of a goat, and I think the actual use in the wizarding world was the believed use of them in the real world at one point.
Yeah. So this is not like necessarily invented. This is like more based on like kind of like some historical magic, I guess. Or proposed magic rather. The other really kind of interesting one here, and I've seen a lot of speculation about this line, although I think that it's maybe not as like grounded, but I sort of love it like either way, if this was the intention. But so Snape says, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? This is an asphodel is a kind of lily. And it means remembrance, and supposedly wormwood is associated with regret. And basically it's like essentially what Snape could be asking or saying here in code to Harry is effectively like, I regret the loss of your mother, Lily.
Right.
So it's like deeply coded, and Harry would never have any way of like determining this.
Well, possibly he could, I guess, because the thing you would actually make if you mix them together is the draft of living death.
Yes.
Which is also then could be a reference to Lily, I guess, although it's not. The draft of living death doesn't kill you; it just puts you into a sleep. But interestingly, for this comparison in Harry's 6th year for his first class with Slughorn, when they're competing to win the Felix Felicis, what they're supposed to brew is the draft of living death.
Yes.
Which is so interesting that it's the very first thing he's asked about, and then it's the one that Harry brews correctly to win the Felix Felicis. Although I went and read that chapter again as well after this, and surprisingly, even though it talks about roots. It talks about like Harry and like Ron chopping up the roots at the beginning. Those are valerian roots. So part of the draft of Living Death includes chopped valerian roots, powdered root of asphodel, and an infusion of wormwood. Like these two ingredients don't come up in book 6, even though they're both mentioned right here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like he's only giving you about half the ingredients here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is definitely pretty fascinating as well. And yeah, I do love the fact though that like a lot of this stuff does end up ultimately, coming back. As the story continues as well.
Also, this is another just a random thing. It's like Hermione like immediately puts her hand in the air because she knows the answer to the question. But it's like it's confusing to me that even Hermione knows the answer to the question. Like, what would you do here? Because we know that the Draft of Living Death is a Newt or an NEWT level potion. So like, why would there have been any information about it at all in the year 1 books she got?
Yes, yeah. 1,000 magical herbs and fungi.
Yeah.
Which interestingly seems like it would be the herbology book.
It does.
Not the potions book. But I guess maybe this is like one of those areas where it's like herbology is quite literally growing the ingredients that could be
It does.
used.
There's probably a lot of crossover. Like
Certainly.
when you're learning about historical events in English, because it helps you understand the book rather than learning about those historical events in history.
Precisely. Yeah. That's a really good example. The other thing that happens here is that basically, Harry does sort of snap back at Snape a little bit here, and he said, he basically he's being grilled with all these questions, very unfairly. To which Harry says, "I don't know," said Harry quietly. "I think Hermione does, though. Why don't you try her?" Which is completely reasonable. From Harry's perspective, he's like, "I don't know what's going on or why you're picking on me, but someone's raising their hand."
Right.
I think it's interesting that Snape says, "In a point will be taken from Gryffindor house for your cheek powder."
Oh, the point scaling is the point power creep or whatever.
The point power creep is really interesting, but I actually feel like there's a reasonable explanation, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. But sometimes it occurs to me that as year 1 students, you're more likely to make mistakes or not know answers, and because everything is a lower level, I almost am curious if as a first year student it's typical point gains and losses might be smaller because the associated victories and losses are also smaller.
Right, like the amount of knowledge needed to have mastered to earn points as a first year isn't as great as 7th year. So 7th year points are weighted heavier.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do like that explanation. Although I guess you can still lose points for certain out of boundsedness.
Yeah, that is true. But year 1, you have a better chance of not losing points than year 6 or 7 years, but do you only use it on day 1 at a time versus 50 at a time? So yeah, that's perseverance.
They go on to lose 50 points apiece later on.
Yes, and I mean that's the type of thing that I think would probably, especially if you were a first year, a freshman in the school, and you're upperclassman, that would be in and of itself reason to stay in bounds, because losing 50 points as a first year, it's you're not even supposed to be able to do that.
Right.
You're not even in the zip code of losing 50 points. You should be losing a point or gaining a point.
At a time.
Yeah, at a time. Yeah. It feels much more incremental. So that's sort of my own personal headcanon as to how and why the point totals seem to go from, it seems 1 point at a time in these opening chapters to eventually it seems almost more of a 5 to 10 point.
5 to 10 points for certain things.
Yeah.
Moving on, there's another sentence here where it says Harry forced himself to keep looking straight into those cold eyes. And that's a pretty interesting one, because we know that is that Snape is a Legilimens, and so I was like, is Snape reading his mind right now?
Yeah,
I bet he is.
He probably is. This is actually another one that we've talked about before, and it's kind of deeply upsetting to even consider. But one of the
What?
Dad and I were talking, and if you would rather not come to Porcupine tomorrow, you don't have to.
Okay.
So if you do want to come to Porcupine, we're going to leave it around 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And if you don't want to go to Porcupine, then